is up, everybody? Welcome back to episode 2 of 2023 for the Fresh Finance Podcast. My name is Thomas Elms. Always got my co-host here, Kyle Ryan. And today we are going to talk about the Secure Act 2.0 that just came into place here at the end of last year. And we're going to highlight how it affects kind of three specific categories of people, how it affects business owners first, retirees second, and primarily W-2 employees, but it kind of affects everyone. And before we get into all of it, we just kind of want to talk about the short history of the Secure Act, and how the Secure Act 1.0 actually came into place in 2019. And it affected two primary things when it comes to financial planning. The first thing is it affected inherited IRA rules, inherited qualified retirement account rules, where before 2019, if you inherited a qualified account, you could take what's called an RMD over your lifetime. And after this change, it limited that to primarily 10 years. Now, this doesn't include spouses, but it adjusted inherited qualified retirement account rules. And secondly, it affected the RMD age for retirement accounts and required minimum distributions in that facet, where originally it was at 70 and a half years old. They changed it up to 72. And Kyle, I'd love to just have you walk into this first segment here of the 2.0 Act and how that has it changed the way that we look at financial planning for business owners, especially on them formulating retirement plans.
Absolutely. It makes a lot of different changes. And really what the Secure Act is, the intent of it back in 2019 and the enhancement of it here, the Setting Every Community Up for Retirement Enhancement Act, is really to allow not only business owners, but employees enhanced ability to save for their own retirement. There's a lot of cost prohibitive things to setting up a retirement account for a business owner. And a lot of times employees feel like they can't afford to make contributions. So between the Secure 1.0 of 2019 and the Secure 2.0 of 2022, which was passed right at the last hour, December 29th, you got to love it for planning purposes because we got to run on this.
Absolutely.
So how does it impact business owners? There's a few ways, and it's really, really favorable in our opinion. So like I said, if you set up a retirement account for your business, whether it's a 401k, a SEP IRA, a simple IRA, what have you, there are startup costs, right? Nothing's free.
Absolutely.
Right? So what happened previously was you would receive up to a 50% credit, a tax credit is money right back to you of the cost of setting up your retirement account. So, you set up a 401k, they can range in costs. I don't want to, they can be anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000, right? As an employer, that's not a small chunk of change for setting up a retirement plan, right?
No.
So what they did was you used to get a 50% credit for the cost of setting it up. Now they've increased it to 100%, meaning cost you say $3,000 to set up a 401k. You pay it, you file your taxes, you say to your accountant, whoever's doing your taxes, the cost of it, you will effectively get a $3,000 tax credit, meaning you set up a retirement account for free that for your business. That hasn't been available before and makes a huge difference for business owners. Secondly, which I think is a game changer, is employers typically will match employee contributions. Now, say I've got a few employees and I'm spending 10 grand each year on my contributions, their match to their 401k, I'm getting a deduction for that, which is great. It reduces the cost of those matching contributions, but now they are actually giving up to $1,000 per employee that you're contributing to, as long as they make under 100,000. They're giving the employer back $1,000. Meaning if you have an employee making 90 grand and you're matching 3%, you're putting in 2,700, but you're getting $1,000 back. That is a huge cost savings for small companies. And these are for, a little disclosure, these are for companies under 50 employees. There are differing rules for those from 50 to 100 and 100 plus, but for the most part, these are game-changing rules that really allow people the ability to have access to a retirement plan at a much cheaper rate.
Yeah. And I think that we'll definitely have a conversation about this in a later episode, but this is really kind of a game changer in understanding the difference between a tax deduction and a tax credit, right? Because, obviously in general purposes, a tax deduction is a dollar for dollar decrease in the taxable income that calculates your tax bill, right? But a tax credit is a dollar for dollar decrease in the tax bill that you have to pay. And that's a major advantage as a business owner that you want to try and take care of. if you have the opportunity. And it's just kind of that idea where there are opportunities where we can pass laws to truly incentivize business owners to do the right thing, to match contributions that employees make, and provide for better retirement options for those individuals, for sure.
Thank you for pointing that out. Just to put numbers to it, because some people better understand with numbers. If you make 100 grand and you contribute $10,000 to a 401k, you get a deduction, meaning you don't get taxed on that 10,000. So you're only getting taxed on 90. Say you're in a 20% tax rate, that's saving you 2,000. If you got a $10,000 credit, you get $10,000 immediately. That's $10,000. There's no, so would you rather have 2 or 10? So that's the big difference between a deduction and a credit. And one last thing that's really important for employers, business owners, is you also, with the SEP IRA and Simple IRA in the past, you were only able to set them up in a pre-tax function. Don't know why. Now they've introduced the Roth SEP and Simple IRAs, which it's about time. It's a great thing that they added. So it's just another way that employers and self-employed individuals can further increase to their retirement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know that we'll hit on this here later, but I think that this piece does actually affect business owners, is the ability for business owners to make Roth contributions as the employer match perspective. We'll get into that and the benefits that it has for employees here later. But I do think that that's an important one to hit on as well, is they're going to be able to make those Roth contributions, which I think, in my opinion, if a company is willing to do that, that's just an extra incentive that they can provide to employees whenever they're looking at hiring and retaining employees. Because I think that there's a lot of people out there, clients that I work with and have talked through on this process, is we'll set up Roth contributions to their, employer 401k account. And the one thing that we, at the point in time, had always had to talk about is, look, your matching contributions, they're going to have to go to that pre-tax account, that traditional 401k account. And, now the fact that we have that option, I think that's going to boost a lot of productivity and the ability to just have more tax-free dollars in retirement for those employees.
Yeah. And before we move on from business owners, all of these changes, they're being impacted right now. Some of them are effective 2023, some of them 2024, but your plan can't include this if it wasn't around. So there's gonna be a lot of changes that happen to 401k plans to stay on top of all the new regulations and laws passed. So this is the best time to consult a financial advisor, a TPA that you helps administer your 401k, and get it reevaluated. See if this is something that's worthwhile for you to add to your plan.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, just kind of transitioning here, Kyle, onto the retiree side, there's kind of one major hot ticket item for retirees, and that's the increase in RMD age that we're going to start seeing here over the next 10 years. And kind of what that plays into is, as of this year, 2023, the RMD age is changing from 72 to 73. That might not sound like a lot, but you also need to think about the generations that are between the gap of what we'll see in 2033, which is that number will change on the RMD side from 73 to 75. And you think that 3 years doesn't make a huge difference, but there's so many planning opportunities that you can take advantage of, whether it's Roth conversions or just other simple planning strategies that you can apply to reduce the lifetime tax bill of your retirement distributions because of those extra 3 years. And I know offline we kind of talked about your idea of tax crunch. I'd love to just kind of hear, what your thoughts are and your theory on this tax crunch.
Yeah, I find this so fascinating. So I think, why are they increasing the RMD age? Because people are living longer, right? I love the idea that no one knew was going to take an RMD in 2023. Because if you were going to take one in 2023 because you were 72, well, now they just moved it to 73. So no new people are taking RMDs this year or in 2033, which I find interesting. But there's going to be a big tax crunch that a lot of people have been starting to talk about since Secure 1.0 passed, because remember, we talked about the changing of inherited qualified accounts. If you inherit an IRA, a Roth IRA, what have you, you used to be able to stretch it out over your lifetime. Now you have to take it out within 10 years. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you have the majority of clients that I work with, if they need money, they're going to be tapping their IRAs before the age of 72.
Yep.
The people who don't touch it until then are typically the wealthier clients of mine that can afford to not touch their IRAs for as long as possible, which is great. Let it grow as long as it can, but there is a slight issue. Typically when people are at that age, if you delay your RMD to 73, 75, you can keep delaying it as long as you can. What you're doing is you're creating a tax crunch on the next generation.
Yeah.
Typically, when are people at their highest earning years? 50s, late 50s, right? So
Mhm.
when is people's life expectancy? 80s. So you put their children at their highest earning years and you say, hey, here's an inherited IRA that you have to take out in 10 years that's taxable to you, that's going to significantly change your tax bracket. And you're creating this tax crunch and making it a bigger and bigger issue by delaying the lifetime with which you can take distributions from your IRA. So
Yeah.
it could be worthwhile. We do a lot of multi-generational planning, as I'm sure your firm does. So you're looking not only at the effective tax rate of their life, but the effective tax rate of the money as it trickles through generations, right?
Yeah.
So is it more effective for the grandparent or the 80, 75-year-olds who start taking distributions, even though they don't have to, but to pay taxes at their lower rate than having their children do it? I think it creates a really interesting discussion, and it creates a rather large tax crunch that people aren't really anticipating.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree there. And I think that that is probably one of the conversations that I think people think about the least
Yeah.
when it comes to the tax over your lifetime conversation about whether you want to contribute monies to a Roth or a traditional retirement account, a pre-tax retirement account. And it does really play a huge advantage. And what I found is it's just a question they don't know to ask, because most people don't understand how the legislation has changed here in the last, I would say, 4 to 5 years. And this year in particular, these are dramatic changes. And kind of segueing into the W-2 employee, kind of the slash everyone else, segment of this conversation is, kind of hitting on the pre-retirees, kind of the people closest to retirement age, is we're seeing, with the Secure 2.0 Act, that they're actually allowing some additional catch-up contributions for people ages 60 to 63 that are still contributing to workplace retirement accounts. And I think this is interesting because there's kind of two segments to this specific topic. Is you have the greater of $10,000 in additional contributions above the catch-up, or it's 150% of the catch-up contribution, which is, as of this year, it's 11,250. You have that ability to make those additional contributions, which kind of hints at the idea what you were talking about is people in their 50s, early 60s are at their prime earning years for the most part. And it allows for that extra contribution. But if you are in a situation where your taxable income at that point in time is over $145,000, all of that contribution has to be in Roth. And I think there's an interesting tax conversation with the IRS and how they like to get their loot as quickly as they can. How that can be a conversation. But I really do like this ability because, especially when we look at business owners as well, is they're getting to that point where they're finally starting to bear the fruit of all of this labor and building a successful company. Their income is incredibly high, and they're trying to really take advantage of as much tax advantage accounts as they can. And I think this is a great place to allow for that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And just to hit some quick numbers and recap what it is. So if you're under age 50, you are not allowed to make a catch-up contribution. Your limit for
Yep.
2023 into a 401k would be $22,500. At the age of 50 and above, you are allowed to make what's called catch-up contributions. Why are they called catch-up? Because you got to catch up.
Yep.
So you are allowed to do an extra 7,500, meaning you're able to contribute $30,000 into a 401k on a yearly basis. And it's really odd that they pick ages 60 to 63 to increase your catch-ups. Why start there, stop there? Why not increase it to 65? How they got to it, I don't know. But I think it's interesting. I think it's a great provision. We have plenty of clients who we are maxing the daylights out of their 401k, whether it's on the Roth or traditional side. And as you mentioned, I really am happy that they're allowing further expansion of being able to get money into the Roth. It's definitely a tax ploy by the IRS and Congress to get more money now by making you go Roth because you're paying it after tax dollars. But I think it's great. They're just continuing to further expand the ability to contribute to not only your retirement, but more importantly, with low tax rates today, your Roth, which is the best game in town for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of hitting on to the Roth conversation and move into the next, topic item is kind of we spoke about this earlier, but employers are now able to make Roth contributions as well. This is so important as a W-2 employee because when we put together these plans beforehand, before this act went into play, we had to take into consideration that your contributions on an after-tax Roth basis would be matched with pre-tax money, right? So that's an account that's slowly going to grow over time. And the fact that we can now plan to say, hey, you're going to contribute, and again, these are just completely random numbers here, but you're going to contribute 7% of your income on an after-tax Roth basis, and your 3% match can also be on the Roth side as well. So you're equivalently doing 10% of your retirement contributions into a fully after-tax Roth account, and I think there's so much value in that.
I honestly never, there's been talks of this happening for a long time.
I never thought it would happen.
I never thought it would come because my big question was, well, employers making pre-tax matching contributions, they're doing that because they're getting a tax deduction. So how would they go around that? And the way is your employers, they're still getting their tax deduction. What's happening is, say, they match you $3,000, you're going to be taxed on that income as if you made it, because what's effectively happening is they're making a pre-tax contribution, immediately getting converted over to your Roth, and you just have to pay taxes. It's essentially a Roth conversion allowed within the plan for employer contributions with maybe unvested. I love it. I know for me,
Yeah.
I'm going to have all my contributions go to Roth while I can, while it makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep. I love that provision.
Yeah. And kind of transitioning to the next ticket item here and hitting more on contributions for employees. So that W-2 employee is, you can now contribute monies to pay down student loans, and your employer will match that contribution. And obviously, that's up to certain limits, but will match that contribution into your 401k. So it's like you're hitting two birds with one stone here, is you're paying down those student loans yourself, but your company is contributing to your 401k account for you so that you can get that retirement plan process started. Because sometimes, depending on the strategies or the feelings and the desires of each individual investor, is some people are really focused on trying to pay that debt down. And if you have a considerable amount of debt, I've definitely worked with doctors, with lawyers, people that have gone through an extensive amount of graduate school, and they have massive loan amounts, and it can take 10 plus years to get those loans paid down. And think about where those people who do, that extended college experience, where they're trying to gain that knowledge in that professional segment of their life, it's going to take them longer to actually get into the professional world anyway. So they're delaying it in that aspect, and then they're delaying it even farther to pay down those loans that they can't afford to contribute to those retirement plans. This is a great Kickstarter for anybody that's getting out of college with student debt, to allow their employer to help them, start to initially fund their retirement plans.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think it's part of a larger generational question that, our generation is facing. College costs are at an all-time high, and they're only growing exponentially. People lately, I mean, we've seen the personal savings rate fall to historic lows. And I mean, you're faced with a choice, you're faced with a choice of paying down your student loan debt or saving for retirement. And for a lot of people, that's an easy question. I've got this monthly payment every month that I need to make. I have to save for something that might be 20, 30, 40 years away. It doesn't seem, it's not as graspable. It's not as tangible, your retirement, as much as that loan, which is right in front of you. So a lot of people just simply weren't contributing their retirement because they had to take care of that debt. Very understandable. Now, just like you mentioned, it allows you to pay off your debt while the employer is matching you on your retirement. And again, it's further allowing people to hit both at the same time.
Yeah. And I kind of want to, as we transition here, I want, let's just focus on here these last two pieces. The first piece here is on the contribution side. There's now, as of 2023, 401k plans can now immediately enroll people into the 401k plan, and they can also set an annual percentage increase up to certain limits. We don't need to go into the super depths here, but we'll offer a percentage increase each year onto that 401k contribution. I think that this is tremendous, because what I think it's going to do is, and it's just, as a planner, it's crazy to think about, but there's so many people that don't know either how or when or what to do when enrolling into a plan. And it also is just going to kickstart that piece as well, because it starts, the auto enrollment is very small. I think it's like 3% of income, goes up to 10%. And it's going to create a great opportunity for that. But at the same time, one of the things that we do want to hit on is you want to work with an advisor, because that's going to be something that they can touch base with you on. And we can take a look at your cash flow situation and say, hey, especially for somebody that maybe just getting out of college and starting a job that's paying well, but they don't necessarily have the cash flow to cover, a large retirement contribution percentage, and they're really focused on paying down student loans, is you want to make sure that all of that does affect, and have some congruency in your plan.
Yeah, there's a big lack of education and knowledge about, retirement plans in general, and auto enrolling someone. In my experience, people don't miss 3%. They don't even really notice it, their
Exactly.
contributions going. So pay yourself first. And then if you notice and you can't afford it, you just opt out.
Yeah, 100%. And I want to move to the last item here. And I think this is probably, at least what I've seen on social media, kind of the hottest ticket item, is the now being able to use unfunded 529 monies to roll into that beneficiary of the 529's Roth IRA. And I'd love to see if you can just kind of hit on the strategy behind this, what kind of the numbers are as far as how long the 529 has to be in place, and what your overall thoughts are on this.
Yep. So a 529 plan has to be in place for 15 years. Now let's talk about a 529 really quick. 529 is typically used for saving for qualified educational expenses. Namely, it's typically used for college. It could be used for K through 12 education, but it's namely used for educational expenses. You put money into this and it grows tax-free if used correctly. Now, great. You set up a 529, you have young kids, you started when they're young, they grow up, they don't want to go to school. What do? Well, in the past, you'd be able to cash it out if you'd like. You pay the taxes on the growth, c'est la vie. Now, if you have had your 529 open and funded for 15 years, and you are able to basically take what you have in your 529 and take up to $35,000 per beneficiary and move it into a Roth IRA. Because what is 529 contributions? They're after tax. For Roth IRA contributions after tax. So finally, they're allowing you to, rather than just having to, eat up the taxes associated with your growth, you're able to convert it over to a Roth IRA now, which is fantastic. The issue is you have to have it open for 15 years, which I find very similar to the Roth IRA, which you have to have open for 5 years if you want your tax-free growth to not get penalized, essentially. Well, now what people would do is they'd have the $1 Roth IRA where you contribute $1 to a Roth IRA, forget about it, and then eventually you're able to roll in whatever amount you want, and all of it is tax-free. Same thing with a 529. It might be advisable for new parents to just open up a 529 plan, put $1 into it, sock it away, and if they ever need to contribute more, anything later, they know that they have the ability that if they don't use it, they can push it to a Roth IRA.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, do you have any other points there?
Yeah, the other point I was going to make was, I mentioned $35,000 limit for a beneficiary. Let's say you have $100,000 into a 529 for one reason or another, and it's named for one of your kids. And you want to give it to your kids. You say, okay, here we go. Here, you get 35, and I'm going to change the beneficiary of my account. You get 35, I'm going to change the beneficiary of my account. You get 35, and you're able to. It's really allows for deeper planning associated with college planning, which is great.
Yeah. Well, and the contribution limits to 529s are incredibly high as far as, having that ability. You can also take a look at the 5-year rule as far as contributions as well. And you can actually do up to 5 years worth of 529 plan contributions in 1 year. So maybe say we've got a high income earning household, and, income earner number one received a huge bonus and they don't have any sort of cash need for that. Those monies could be utilized to super fund a 529 plan and, put that in place as well. So there's tons of planning opportunities there.
There is. Yeah. And that's a great use of 529s. And I think the contribution limit this year, it's a moving target, but I think it's 17 now per person.
Yeah, I think that,
if you're married and you've got one kid, you can contribute 17, your spouse can contribute 17. You got multiple kids, you can get 34 a kid. They really have expanded the gifting laws, which is nice as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's all the points that I had. Kyle, do you have anything else?
The only other thing with the 401k that I mentioned is they introduced what's called an emergency savings option. So again, our generation's really getting straddled with not being able to save. So a lot of people are saying, why would I save for my 401k when I don't even have an emergency savings? So what they allowed you to do is you're able to contribute up to $2,500 into your 401k. It has to be on the Roth side, into an emergency savings fund, if you will, that's just invested in cash. You can only take out $1,000 per year. And it allows you to make contributions to an emergency savings fund while still getting an employer match on the pre-tax side, or Roth if you so choose. But I think it's another interesting way for some people, if they really can't get emergency fund in there and they want to continue saving for retirement, it's an option. I don't think it's not going to move the needle much on people's financial plans, but there's a lot of things that came out of the Secure Act, and that's another one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Okay, well, that kind of sums it up for today, Kyle. I think this was a great discussion. Super excited for the next one. We appreciate you guys watching, listening, maybe doing a little bit of both, and we're excited for the next episode. Thank you.